If you're working on your 77 to 85 Mercedes, you really want to check out the battery tray. This is a particular problem on the W123. The W126 can also corrode, but it's due to the location of the tray down by the drains that'll cause a problem in a 123. If you see corrosion just beginning on the corner of the tray underneath the battery, you need to deal with it right away. This is what can happen if you ignore it. Obviously, this owner did not notice the corrosion that started right in this corner, and if you leave it, this is what's going to happen. That's your W123 battery tray. Now, how do you fix this one? This one is not economically repairable. I do have brand new OE ones. They're still available as of November 2023 that are on my website. But if you have one that's not so bad, let me show you one. This one I grabbed early enough to fix it. And you can see, you know, it starts right in this left-hand forward corner underneath the battery because there's a water drain right here. And one of the reasons this occurs is the water drain gets plugged up, so you need to make sure your drains in your W123 are always clear, particularly the one right underneath the battery tray here. That water will fill up and get on the tray, mix that with acid fumes, you know, gassing off the battery, and that's what causes this severe corrosion. Now, if you have one that isn't too bad, you can fix it. I like to use Miracle Paint. This is a coating that stops corrosion. It's really tough stuff, and it works very well. And what I'm going to do now is show you a few examples of how I've dealt with this problem in the past. Here's the tool, and here's the special attachment. I like this pointed attachment here because it can get up in corners. This is the same attachment I use for my aluminum anodized polish kit. Now I'm going to stop just here a second and put my respirator on because you know, you should wear a respirator, so I won't talk as I show you just a couple areas where I'm going to knock this rust down and smooth it out. Okay, now you can see what I've done is I've knocked off all the loose rust and scale and I've sanded out into this area. I may hit this once more. What I do is I use one pad that kind of tears the pad up when you're doing the rough stuff, and then come back and do a little bit more to smooth these areas out. And then I'll clean this. I'll clean this with a brake cleaner or lacquer thinner and get all the junk and the rusty dust off of here. And then we'll come back in once we get both these cleaned up and show you how we're going to apply the Miracle Paint. Okay, I've prepped the W115 battery tray. You can see where I've sanded the areas and tapered them out from the rust spots, both on the top and the bottom side here. I should mention a couple things. One is if you have an air compressor, this is only going to work if you have an air compressor. These little air die grinder tools with the small sanding attachments like you see here, these work even better than the multi-tool, and they allow you to really cut into the metal a lot quicker. But if you don't have a compressor and air tools, then the multi-tool is probably your best bet for the cost. Now, when you're using Miracle Paint, we send out complete instructions on how to use this. But one thing I do want to mention, this does have a shelf life. You know, 3 to 4 months shelf life, and it kicks off with exposure to air. So if you're doing a small area, it's okay. You can lift the lid off and get some Miracle Paint out of there, but immediately close the lid. Don't walk around with the lid off, or this is going to get hard in the can. The other thing you can do is take this and pour it into a little container and then work from the small container. But what I'm going to do here is all I'm going to do is cover the areas of rust and the areas I've sanded. Once again, Miracle Paint does not stick well to smooth paint, so you do not want to coat the entire tray with the Miracle Paint. Okay, now I'll let that sit. It'll flatten out a little bit. Then I'm going to lift the can up. I'll get another little application of Miracle Paint. And then I'm going to come in and do this area. And you just lay it on. We sell the heavy duty thick Miracle Paint. It doesn't tend to run. One of the things I don't like about POR 15 is it tends to run all over the place and is here as well as Miracle Paint over the long haul. Okay, that's all I need to show you at this point. It's going to take me a few minutes to go around and do all these spots and do this bottom section. Then we'll do the areas inside the engine compartment, and I'll come back and show you the final results before we reinstall the tray. You'll have to admit that that looks a lot better. Obviously, it's not going to look like factory brand new unless you spend a lot of time sanding and recoating and filling and so on. Look at how hard this is. I mean, you can't even bend the paintbrush, so don't expect to reuse these paintbrushes. Always use gloves. My instructions emphasize this. And always when you reseal the lids, always put either a piece of plastic or wax paper, because if you let Miracle Paint in that groove and you seal the lid, you will not get the lid off. I guarantee it. The lid will actually bond to the can. So I took that old rusty battery tray that was reasonably solid and cleaned it up with air tools and sanding discs and coated it. 2 coats of Miracle Paint. Take a look. Now, that sure looks a lot better than what I pulled out of there. So I'll keep harping on this. Pay attention to your battery tray. There are 2 things that you can do to reduce the potential for this type of rust. Number 1, keep the water drains clean right here behind the hinge and the one down underneath the battery tray on this side. That will help prevent some of the corrosion due to water, because this will flood down here with those drains plugged. And the other thing is you got to reduce the gas off from a lead acid battery, and you can do that by getting an AMG battery that will help with this situation. So as you can see here, and I've used this for almost 20 years, Miracle Paint can really help, because not only was there rust on the tray, there was rust underneath it, and I was able to repair that as well. Most of the original battery hold down plates on these W123 chassis are all rusted, corroded, shot. A lot of times even the studs are so badly rusted you can't use them, but in this case I have good studs. This is what I produce here in my shop. I came up with this about 10 years ago because of the lack of a good solution for this. These are stainless steel and the nuts are stainless steel. So when you put these on here and tighten that nut down, you don't have to worry about these clamps ever corroding again. Because when you're working around these battery boxes and these old W123s in particular, you want to do everything possible to prevent corrosion. So what's the moral of the story? Do not neglect your battery tray.